My name is John. I'm going to be giving you tips on being an active TA, but you can almost rethink of that as I'm hopefully going to give you tips to make your life a little less stressful in and outside of the classroom. So just a little bit on myself. I graduated from NC State a couple years ago. And the past couple years I've been working towards finishing my master's in marine science. And so over these 3 or 4 years I've been teaching. I've had the opportunity to teach a wide variety of non-majors and major courses, course labs in weather and climate, in introductory marine science, even marine organisms. So I've kind of had a nice wide variety of the earth systems. And so over these years I've really kind of fallen in love with teaching, and I put a lot of effort into what I do inside and outside the classroom, and so I'm hoping to kind of give you guys some of these tips that I found useful over the years. And so before we kind of get going, I just want, if you've never taught in a lab setting before or a lecture setting, I just want you guys to stand up for just a second. Just scoot your chair back. I just want to get a feel. You too, stand up. Feels good. Okay, you guys have a seat. And then if you have taught, I want you to stand up. So I'm doing this just so you guys also get the blood flowing, but also so I want you guys to see these three and myself. We're all going to be probably willing to answer questions. So I want this to be, so you guys can have a seat. I want this to be an interactive thing. So if there's something, if I'm on a slide, you guys have a question, don't wait till the very end. Just raise your hand. Well, I want this to be kind of a friendly environment, and ask them questions at the end. Ask me questions at the end. I don't want this. It would be highly ironic if this was kind of a stiff lecture and I stood up here and I talked like this the whole time. So I want this to be kind of a friendly environment. So when I started putting this together, I want to give you guys just a definition of what being active is. So from our friends at dictionary.com, it's to be engaged in action, characterized by energetic work and participation. And so while I was kind of looking up stuff to put in the PowerPoint, I stumbled upon this quote that says, "One secret of leadership is that the mind of a leader never turns off. Leaders, even when they are sightseers or spectators, are active and not passive observers." And I just felt like, even though this is more towards leadership, I felt like this could be directly applied to us in the classroom when we're teaching. And so I wrote my very first quote, basically just subbing out the leadership words. And one secret of teaching is that the mind of the TA never turns off. TAs, even when they're sightseers and spectators, are active and not passive observers. So this is not only when you're in the classroom, but outside the classroom, you've got to work towards being a little more proactive. Take the initiative. Don't just sit back and wait for your students to kind of take the initiative, because a lot of times they won't, and you miss out on trying to reach them. So have you guys started teaching? I think maybe your first week or second week in. So you might have already stumbled onto some problems. So I'd be more than happy. We can try and tackle those today. But just kind of some of the challenges you're going to experience over the very first week and then through the semester. And the very first thing is, first day of class, you have to gain the respect of your students. And it's something I never thought about when I was starting out. And it's something that's very tough to do. I mean, when I started teaching, I was usually younger than most of the students that were in there. They're seniors just trying to get a science credit. And so it was really tough. That first semester, I don't know how much respect I actually earned, and they kind of walked all over me. So I want to try and avoid that. And then kind of tagging off of that, as you're going through the semester, you're going to want to try and create effective presentations. This will not only limit a little stress on you for trying to have to re-explain stuff. If you create very clear, interactive presentations, your students are going to grasp it better, and they're going to be more engaged during the lab. And then finally, you kind of have this juggling act with being a TA. So you have, not only do you have your research and your coursework, but you have, for the TA, you have to prepare your lectures. You have weekly lab meetings. Then you have the actual time you're in the classroom teaching the material, so like 2 to 3 hours. Then you have grading, which could be really long, depending on how long you want to spend on it. And then outside of that, you have to hold office hours, and you got to answer emails. So there's just all this stuff you've got to kind of balance. And I'm going to kind of, one way or another, touch on all of these and try and give you at least a couple pointers to kind of make all of these challenges just a little bit easier. So when I started, I just thought it was just going to be a cakewalk. I was going to go in, they were going to love, I'm teaching meteorology, I love meteorology, and they're going to love it too. Who doesn't love looking at hurricanes? But they didn't love it, and that was a challenge for me to kind of swallow. So you have to work for it, and it does take some effort. So again, the focus, I'm going to be touching on a lot of those challenges just with more of a proactive approach to it. And I'm going to kind of break it into 2 sections. So if you guys have the handout, you can already kind of see how I'm going to break it up. But in the classroom and outside the classroom. And so these were the 3 main things when I was starting to think about this. These are the 3 main things I struggled with early on. And day 1, finding that balance. I want to try and help you guys find that in between where you're respected by your students and they aren't trying to take advantage of you, and but you're also approachable, not just this mean TA that won't let you even do anything in the classroom. And then also create an active learning environment. So not just, again, stand up here and just never even turn to the class, never move around, sit at the front. It's just a very important thing to start working towards, and you're not going to get it in day 1. I'm still working to, you guys can probably give me pointers on how to make this better. I'm still working towards it every day. And then also physically being active in the classroom. This was something I'd always kind of done because I can't really sit still. So this is something I'm going to encourage you guys to do instead of just sitting up at the front of the room. So I'm going to kind of give you some tips to make that a little easier. So okay, so respect, and I've said this probably 3 times now, but day 1, you guys have already had your day 1. So your next time you go in there, make sure that your rules and expectations are clearly laid out. I didn't really worry about this at first, but if you don't clearly explain this on day 1 or very early on in the semester, they're going to slowly try and squeak by some of your rules. So like for example, one of the classes I taught, we had a quiz the very first 5 minutes of class. And so how I kind of made sure they didn't try and squeak by this taking the quiz, I just made it very clear on the very first day that it's going to start right when the class starts. So from 0 to 5 minutes into class, that's when you have time to take the quiz. But I'd have people coming in 3, 4, 5 minutes late and then expect to have the full 5 minutes. So early on, I just told them, look, if you come in 3 minutes late, that's fine. It's fine if you're late, but you now have 2 minutes to finish the quiz. So it's even for everyone. And then it's not pushing your own stuff back, because then I was finding myself starting 10 minutes in the lab, 15 minutes in the lab, and it's slowing everyone else down. So if you're very clear with rules kind of like that, I mean, I know every class is different. That was just an example of you've got to lay the ground rules very first day, because wherever you set this bar and wherever you set your expectations for their attendance, for when they turn their work in, for participation in class, wherever you set that, they will go up to the bar or below it. It's rare that you're going to have students just really exceed that bar. And so it's just important that you set this high early on, because they're going to try and take advantage of you. And I put this in here because I had a friend who, hopefully this doesn't happen to anyone, this has never happened to me, but she was struggling with respect in her classroom. She came frazzled to one of our lab meetings, and she was like, they're not calling me by my name. And we're like, well, what are they calling you by? And they said, well, they're not actually calling me by anything. All they're doing is snapping to get my attention. And that is just so sad that even people would think that they can do that. But clearly tell them, look, I want to be called John, or I want to be called Jake. I mean, I don't want to be called Mr. Bartlett. That's my dad's name. I'm not a doctor yet. Or you really just have to clearly just walk them straight through everything, and don't expect them to just get it, because it doesn't work like that. So tagging along with that is approachability. So first couple weeks, you guys are going to be kind of feeling each other out, and you want to lay the ground rules. That's very important, but you don't want to be mean. You don't want to be be stern, but don't be unapproachable. And you definitely don't want to look like this guy, and they're going to see you as this. They're going to see you as this mean TA. They can't ask you questions. And so
May I have your attention, please? There's been a Carolina alert issue asking people to take shelter. Please proceed to levels 5 or below. I repeat, there has been a Carolina alert issue asking people to take shelter.
Level 5.
Please proceed to level 5 or below. We will update you as soon as we have more information. We're good. Go ahead.
Okay. And so, in addition to trying to earn their respect, you have to work towards creating a friendly work environment. And something I found extremely useful, giving out candy on the first day. That food and incentive has always worked for me. And so I do like a little icebreaker, and for them going through the pain of doing the icebreaker, give them candy. Now I know some labs, my lab, you can't eat in it, so it's just wrapped candy, and they'd take it out and then they would enjoy it. So really giving a Kit Kat can go a long way in the long run of the semester. And then I know I was talking to Steven, who's in my lab, about playing music. This was something I've never been a big one in music, because really don't think a lot of people can agree on one type of music. But I know Steven had he let his students listen to music in his lab, maybe have one earbud in, listening to music. I know when I walked into a lab where the TA, she was playing some music in the background, and listening to a little Mumford & Sons in the background, it calmed me down, and I wasn't even doing any work. So it kind of breaks the silence of the room, and it makes it a little easier for them to work and ask questions and work in their groups. And then this was something new that I the past couple of times I've taught, is taking a selfie. I know 2014 was like the year of the selfie, and I've actually had people that want to take selfie with their experiment. And as long as you aren't dealing with like great white sharks, or that it's something that they can get injured by, I think that you can definitely let them do that. And again, all these things, you just don't want to let it get out of hand. But I think in moderation, you can let them take a picture of the experiment, because what that means is they're excited about it. They think it's cool, and they think it's worthy to be on Twitter or Instagram. And so when I put this picture in here of the selfie, it kind of doubles as this is a selfie, and you don't want to be the shark. You don't bite their head off if they pull their cell phone out. Just again, in moderation, just make sure it doesn't. If it starts to get out of hand, nip it in the bud. Just tell them, look, explain the boundaries for using their cell phone. But I've never really had a problem with them kind of getting involved with the experiment that they're doing. And just as an example, this was something we did in one of our labs. So it's just, you have low density water, medium density water was in the middle with the clear, and then you have the high density water on the right. And so when you pull the plugs, the water pours in, and then you get this stratification. And I mean, their eyes, just when they saw this, they just couldn't believe what was happening. And I've had several people want to put their face in this clear part and take a picture and put it on Facebook. So again, as long as it's not a chemical or anything that they can get, let them do it. I mean, it really makes it an easier environment to work in. So probably most of you have to at least modify some PowerPoint slides before lab or lecture. Sometimes you might have to make them from scratch. And I found this to be very important because it's the very first 5-10 minutes of class, maybe even longer depending on how long your lab is. And you really have to work towards preparing and practicing your presentations. I'm sure we've taken so many classes. I'm sure it's really easy for you to tell when the teacher just put those slides together or hasn't looked at the slides in 2 years. So students can tell when you're not prepared and when you don't have things together. And so by practicing and spending an extra hour to prepare your presentation, your slides are going to be so much clearer. Your explanations to your students are going to be much clearer. And so this is going to it's honestly going to make you understand the material a little better. So it kind of benefits everyone. And then they're going to grasp it so much easier. And it's more entertaining than someone who's kind of fumbling through the slides. And if you spend a little extra time, you can maybe put a little extra picture of a cat playing a piano, or think of something else you can add to put to the PowerPoint. And so while you're kind of giving your presentation, something to kind of get your students awake and make sure they're paying attention is calling on your students. I know sometimes people will go up there, they'll talk for 15-20 minutes, and then not even ask, you guys have any questions, and then they'll just say, all right, go on your own, and then they're like, well, I don't even know what happened. And so by calling on your students, if they know you're going to call on them, they're going to be a little nervous and they're going to pay attention a little more. And I put this in here because one of my teachers in my undergrad would do this, and she would print out all of our pictures, and I think we all have access to this on Blackboard. And she'd lay them out on a table, and when she had a question in her PowerPoint, she had this little plastic spider that she'd close her eyes and she'd throw it, and whoever it landed on, they'd answer the question. And I'm not very scared of spiders, but I was terrified of this little plastic spider because you could get called on any single question, and you were aware of that, and it definitely made me pay attention a lot more. So doing things like this where it kind of keeps your students on edge, like, okay, he really could call on me, you're going to get just a few more people that are going to pay attention a little longer to your presentation. And then also something that I've started using a lot more is active learning techniques. So just raise your hand if you've at least heard of active learning techniques. Okay, so I know I took a whole seminar or workshop on this like a year ago. And so there are hundreds of these things that people have created. And essentially what they are is they're just little things that you can do in your presentation, and then also during the class or at the end of class that kind of makes your students be active, and it's an easier way for students to typically learn. And so I'm going to show you two that I use pretty much every single class that I teach, and it's called Think, Pair, Share and Muddiest Point. And you can Google these afterwards, but I'm going to try and explain these. Try and kill two birds with one stone. So we're going to do a Think, Pair, Share, and you're going to also learn Muddiest Point at the same time. So what a Think, Pair, Share is you pose a question. So it could be anything. It could be what is global warming? What are glaciers? Where do you find glaciers? Usually you want to do like the main point because you want to try and drive this point home. And so you pose this question, then there's a pause, and you think about it for about 30 seconds. And then when the 30 seconds are up, you turn to your neighbor or you talk with your group, and you give your idea of what the answer is. And then after you guys have you try to come up with a uniform answer, and then you as the TA will call on a group or ask them to raise your hands depending on how mean you are if you really want to just pick on random people. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that right now. So my question to you is, what is the muddiest point exercise? What do you think it is? And then I'm going to explain it to you. Okay, so your 30 seconds starts now. So think about it. It doesn't have to be exactly 30. Once you kind of have an idea, turn to your neighbor and start chatting with them.
Yeah.
You guys have a rough idea, you think? Think so? All right. So now is, in their eyes, it's the most terrifying part of this exercise when you call on them. So what do you think it is?
This point can be a point where people get confused, or many views can be there.
Yep.
A little, debating point.
Yeah. Pretty much. So what I would do, I don't know exactly when you're supposed to do this. I would do this at the end of class. So I would have them just on a sheet of paper write down what they thought the muddiest point is. So the most difficult thing that they just couldn't get that day. Maybe most of the time there's some uniformity in the room. It'll be like a couple key concepts that they just didn't understand, and that's very important in the long term for them, because even though they've just finished the lab and they've turned it in and now they're moving to a new topic, most likely they're doing the same stuff in lecture. And so you're aiding, the whole point of a lab is to kind of aid the lecture, so this even helps with the main concepts. And then so I'll collect them at the end and I'll read them, and I'll either send out a handout that maybe explains it, or the very next lab I'll kind of smooth over those points and then jump right into the next lecture. So it's just a good way to kind of clear up any of the muddy points. Yeah. So then lastly, the main thing that I found useful is to physically be moving in the classroom. And so not only, most of the time you'll stand as you're giving your presentation, and then after your 10 minutes, I know a lot of people they'll just kind of sit over at their computer, and they'll just be doing their own thing while they're doing the exercise. But I mean, it's kind of hard to kind of get my attention unless you want to yell out my name, and most people don't want to yell out my name. Maybe you snap for me, but I won't respond well to that. And so it's important to be looking at them, moving around. Just, I mean, it sounds silly. I mean, I was kind of laughing at this when I was reading this slide, but like just moving around, just asking like, how's it going? Like, where are you guys at? What are your numbers looking like? Just your presence moving around will limit them from being on their cell phone, being off it, goofing off. The students that are just kind of waiting for the next guy to finish the problem, it's so easy to stand when you're actually moving around. It's so easy to tell who has no idea what's going on, and then you can reach out to them and just say like, what are you stuck on? Where are you at in the lab? And really, you can't reach any of your students if you're doing your own homework. And I know we're really busy, but the thing is, we're only in the classroom like 2 hours, and if you're teaching 2 or 3 sections, that's 4 to 6 hours. It's really not that much time to kind of take a break from your work and kind of get some exercise in. Most of the time, I was sweating by the end of the lab because I'm just running all over the room. And so, listen to your group conversations. That's the biggest thing, and you can easily hear when one person says a wrong direction that the group's kind of going in, or the whole group might be completely lost. And also tagging along with this is you yourself have to be excited about the material. I know it's for me, when I came here, I had to teach marine organisms. I hadn't taken biology in 7 years, and so for me, coming from meteorology, looking at tornadoes and hurricanes and weather maps, it's really hard for me to get excited about phytoplankton. It really was. And so I had to spend extra time not only mastering the material on my own, I was learning it as they were learning it, but then just having exciting PowerPoints and not just standing up here like, oh, this is phytoplankton, I really don't like this. They can sense when you don't like the material. And that kind of, their energy kind of plays off of the energy that you bring to the room. And I don't know if you can read this down here. It just says that I found this picture online some months ago. It's just that my Italian teacher has a Nerf gun for students who use Facebook during class. So given that we're under a warning for shots fired, I don't recommend you carrying a Nerf gun around. But I think that is a creative way to, like, you're not scolding them for having Facebook, but they're kind of fearful you're going to shoot a little dart at them. And I just thought that was really funny. I wish I had thought of that. So kind of an example of how being stationary can kind of go bad. My senior year, I fractured my leg, and so I had a boot on, and the way the classroom was set up, it wasn't this open. It was just kind of lined up tables, and so I couldn't move around the room at all. And so I had to sit up at the front and do my best to kind of interact with the students. And I'm telling you, I had the most cheating, the most Facebook use, the most laziness just overall. And so looking back at it, now that I really never sit when I'm in the class, when I'm in the lab, it just kind of goes to show that you moving around will automatically make them work a little bit harder on their stuff and be a little more focused. And this sign, the reason I put this in here, this sign says disability does not equal inability, and I had propped my crutches up right beneath it, so my friends thought it would be funny for me to take a picture of that. But in this case, having this disability, I was really unable to effectively reach my students. And I was forced to have this experience, but I'm really glad that I had it, because now I can kind of look back on it and see that when I couldn't move, I had all these problems. And so after seeing that Nerf gun picture, I really should have had one of these like big Nerf gun machine guns at the front to kind of unload on students who are cheating. But so those were the three main things that I know I experienced in the classroom. And I just kind of want to take a moment. We'll just kind of pause for a second, and I'm going to take a drink of water, just kind of have a halftime break. Do you guys have any questions so far? Any things that, or any ideas of your own that were like, you know, this is something I've already started using and that I probably haven't thought of, or maybe I did and I just didn't put it in here, that someone else could use. So anyone have any questions or comments so far? Do I need to start calling on people? No, I'm just kidding.
I was mentioning to my here about, actually just did this on Wednesday. I did a muddiest point, but I also did a activity for, this was actually an honors lecture class, and I had them do an activity for a chapter that would be very boring in a lecture. So I actually had the material and I had them search it out for themselves, and then I had candy that actually related to the material, which happened to be Earth Crust and Mantle. So I had peanut M&Ms and I had Laffy Taffy for the mantle material and that sort of stuff, and it went over really well.
So again, candy works wonders. Yeah, so that's a great idea. And being in the earth sciences, I feel like it's maybe a little easier than if you're teaching a math class. It's going to be tougher. So I don't know what the backgrounds are, but there's always a way to kind of twist it to make it a little easier. So anything else? You guys just want to power through? Yep.
You said the activity in the class, you should be writing about the class material. But sometimes maybe too dramatical passion is not good, right?
So, I mean, maybe I have to look back at my class evals and see if someone said that. Maybe I was staring. I don't know. I mean,
I think students can tell if you're being fake, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely, like, I did my best to try and make connections to what I fell in love with in science. And I mean, I guess if you're like just jumping around and like throwing confetti and like I mean that might be a little too, it might distract from the whole point. See, I guess there is a bar set somewhere. I don't feel like I've breached that yet, but maybe. Anything else? Okay. So the final things we're going to kind of talk on is outside of the classroom. So you're gonna have lots of grading during the week. So kind of being proactive in grading it as it comes in will really help you, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And then when you're in the classroom, of course you're available because you're standing in front of them, but offer to be there after class for 5 minutes. Make sure that when you set your office hours that you go to your office hours, and to just be available by email. And then also, we're just going to kind of talk about the communicating with the other TAs that are working the same class and the lab curator. So starting with grading. So if you've already had your first week of class, you might already have lab reports, or you might already have like introductory worksheets you've got to start grading. Grade them right now. Don't wait, like unless you have like a big test, of course study for the test, but don't wait a month and then sit down and grade 4 or 5 lab reports, because not only is that going to stress you out, but it's not giving your class proper feedback. Pretty much it's a feeling out process for, especially if you're doing lab reports, so they know what you're expecting of them, and so by grading it as it comes in, you don't have this big lump sum of grading, and then also it helps your students kind of answer the way that you want them to, or if you want them to answer a little more in depth, tell them that the first week. Don't tell them that a month or two into the semester, or they're just not gonna. It's too late at that point. And so while you're grading, it's important not to kill yourself on writing. If you're writing more than the student wrote for the answer, most of the time you're writing way too much. You want to give very, very succinct feedback. I mean, if they got it wrong, do your best in a quick manner to explain to them, or say like, come see me, or explain it in the next lecture if it's a big concept. So a way that I would give succinct feedback is especially on big misunderstandings. So if I gave you guys a 10-question quiz and you all missed number 3, instead of me writing the right answer for every single one, I would just kind of go back, kind of read the question, ask them a question again, and say where's the disconnect, and try and explain it a little differently, because obviously something was missed across the board. So I found just kind of minimizing the repetitive stuff on every single person's lab report or worksheet will help you kind of minimize the amount of time you spend on grading. And so outside of grading, you have to typically you have at least an hour of office hours that you have to hold, or you do it by appointment. Make sure you attend your office hours. I know a lot of people that will just say, oh well, no one's going to come. No one ever comes, so I'm not going to go this week. And then that one week, someone had a question and they came, and then on your class eval, so-and-so never goes to their own office hours. So if you make sure when you post your office hours, make sure they're office hours you can always attend, and just bring your own work to do in it, waiting for that one student to come for the semester. And so I would always hold at least one office hour a week, but I would always be very clear that I will always answer emails. Since I work with satellite data, I sit in front of a computer for like 12 hours a day or more, and so I'm always ready to answer an email. And so when they come in, do your best to respond as quickly as possible. But then this kind of, you can see where this could quickly get out of hand. So again, like this is all kind of interconnected, in that if you're gonna answer emails, be very clear at the start of the semester. Okay, after 10 p.m. I'm not going to answer any emails. So you won't get someone that sends you one at 1 a.m. for a report that's due the next morning, and it'll save you a lot of hassle. But I found that they're a lot more apt to ask you questions through email than to actually take the time to walk to the building and come up to your office to go to office hours. So I think being available by email is something that will honestly save you time if you can just quickly respond and not let the emails kind of build up. And then finally, this was something that I hadn't really thought about until I had to coordinate. I was a curator for a lab this past semester, so I had 4 TAs that I was kind of managing their labs and setting up their labs for them. But you're essentially a part of a team, and even though you go to the classroom and yes, you're there and you're the only one in the room, you still have 2 or 3 other TAs sometimes that are teaching the same stuff, probably going through the same struggles you are. And so if you have weekly lab meetings, talk to them. Just ask them, like, I've got a really, like, I really missed explaining this point last week. How did you guys explain it? So then you can then clear it up the next week. Or I've got a couple students, I know they're cheating. I really don't know what to do. Use them for advice. And that way you're not killing yourself trying to figure out the absolute best way to do it, but you're also making sure that you're all on the same page. Especially within a single type of lab, if you have one TA who gives someone who is cheating a 0, and then you have another TA who wrote them up and submitted it to the school, those are 2 completely different things. And a lot of times friends will take classes, and you're going to avoid a lot of long-term hassle if you make sure you're all handling situations on the same level. So those are a little more simple than the challenges you handle in the classroom. But basically, in summary, being active is more than just physically moving around. It's taking an initiative to just spend an extra amount of time, ask one more question to that student, move around just a little bit more, maybe carry a Nerf gun around with you. But really, even when you think that you don't have to be active and you can just be a sightseer, you really do. There is always an opportunity for you to be active. And so really, the possibilities are endless into how active you want to make the classroom and how active you want to be outside of the classroom. Hopefully you don't be too active, but I think that I think it's really hard to do that. So those were the main points I had. So I think I kind of flew through that, but I want to thank Dr. Hardy and CTE for having me as a speaker. I want to thank you all for sitting through this, and hopefully it was interactive and not boring. So thank you.